I want to talk about religion. Now, I know generally speaking, when a stranger starts a conversation with you with those words, it's usually a pretty good indication that you should run. Just get out of there. But no. This is in the context of D&D. I feel like religion is something that usually falls by the wayside. It really can't be overstated how much of an impact religion has had on the formation of every civilization to have ever existed. So, how much more so would religion impact a world in which not only do the followers of these religions believe that the holiest among them have superpowers, but that there is objective, right before your eyes, evidence that these followers have superpowers? Despite how big religion has been in the real world, most players and DMs just kind of ignore it. It's just a spot on the character sheet that says, oh, deity, and that's it. It doesn't inform their decisions. It doesn't really do anything. It doesn't inform the world around them. And that is a big issue. I know I have the book around here somewhere. I should have dug it out for this. Oh, well. They're within the Ring of Fire. When Andrew Wood made that setting, he started with the deities, understanding how important religion is to the formation of societies. He set out first with the gods. He created 77 gods, each one ruling over a different day, and then thought about how that system of divinity would impact his world, where there's 77 gods inhabiting the 77 thrones of divinity. If one should die, another person needs to rise up and take its place. There always must be 77. Each one governs different things as a result of the 77 different gods. A year is 77 days long, with each day being dedicated to a god and having different amounts of daylight and nighttime based on what that god wants, where you have the first day of the cycle being Ahura Mazda, god of the day, 24 hours of daylight. Meanwhile, the last day of the cycle is devoted to Ahriman, which is the long night, and he's the god of darkness and death, and it's 24 hours of night. It's these bigger implications that religion has on the world are what make a world a little bit more interesting. You don't even need to get that deep. I'm not saying get in there and be like, yes, no, we start from the gods. The gods made the world this way and that way. Some people are going to do that, but you don't need to get that deep. What I'm saying is, have answers for your players when they ask you about their religion. Like, let's say someone goes, oh, hey, what are the holy days of? I'm a Chord worshiper. What are Chord's holy days? Or even if you don't want to give a specific day, be like, oh, there's one coming up in a month. It's a festival. It's for the summer solstice. There we go. Summer solstice is the festival of Chord. Just have an answer. Have a basic answer for not even details, but just like holy texts. What are the holy books called? Are there holy books for these religions? What are their temples like? Again, I'm going to use Chord as an example because I really like Chord. My party, when they went into this one city, they actually asked, well, the one player was a Chord worshiper. He's like, hey, is there a temple to Chord in the city? Yeah, sure, go ahead. So he goes to the temple, and he's thinking he's going to go in there do some praying. And when he gets in there, he's welcomed in for service. And as he enters, he sees this large stone cathedral that has no seats, no pews, but there's a crowd of people formed in the middle. And as he approaches, he realizes this crowd of people is standing around a circle carved in the floor, and there's just two men wrestling in the middle. When one of them eventually taps out, the other one helps him up, and they clap each other on the back, and all of them just say, like, glory to the Lord of Might! So that's this religion, because Chord is the god of strength and competition and good sportsmanship. Their prayer services are just sparring matches and wrestling matches. Any use of strength glorifies the Lord of Might. It's details like this that add to your world, especially for religious characters. Now, not every character has to be religious, but if you have a player that has filled in that little deity slot on their player sheet, their character sheet, almost lost the word there, then, yeah, chances are that character at least has some passing understanding of the god they worship. They've chosen that religion. So either work with them to develop it a little bit, or if they have questions, answer them. This falls equally to players, though. So, one of the big problems I see is players who play clerics are doing it wrong. They're just doing it wrong. You've got, I know no, DM Jim Bob, you can't say they're doing it wrong. You don't know their character. Yeah, they're doing it wrong. You've got a priest. Your cleric is a priest. That is who they are. They are a priest. They should know about their religion. If you've got a cleric and you have not put any proficiencies in 5e, or if you hadn't put any skill points into 3rd edition into religion, you're wrong. You are a priest. You need to know your religion. You should know a basic thing. Even if your DM hasn't created something, it should be something you come up with. Some details about this religion, or at least how your character practices the religion. How they choose to worship their god. Why they worship that god. One of my proudest moments as a DM was I had a player who was relatively new to the game. She'd only played in 1 or 2 sessions with me before. And after a couple adventures of pretty hectic stuff, they finally got to a city and could have some downtime. And first thing she does, I ask everyone, all right, you got some downtime, what are you going to do? The local bard goes off, well, not local, the party bard goes off, and he auditions for a local theater troupe. Gets the job, no problem, because he has like 40 and perform, because that's what bards do. Then we have like the rogue. When they got there, she said, okay, I've got a ton of magic items. I'm going to get these identified at the Arcane University. Well, because that's the whole point of the city. I'll get into that another time. So she goes off to get her magic items identified. The priest, the cleric, says to me, is there a temple to my god in this city? I said, well, yeah, there is. The temple of St. Maria, goddess of mercy and healing, was the one she worshipped. It's one of my gods of my own creation. And so she goes to the temple. She's like, all right, I'm going to go to the temple, and I'm going to spend all of my daily spells healing and ministering to the sick. Well, good for you. You are embracing the religion of your character. Your character worships a goddess that is all about healing, caring for others, and protecting others, showing mercy. And now here you are with this downtime activity of, I'm going to go about my god's business. I am going to go about St. Maria's business. I am going to heal the sick, heal the wounded. And once she was out of spells, she started even using mundane medical checks and things like that. But she then also, every time they came back in town, would go to the temple, and she'd be like, all right, well, if there's no, like, because it's the middle of a war, there's a lot of wounded, so she's like, once I expend my spells, I'm sure there's other priests that are also at it, so I'll lift some of the burden on them, and I'll lead the services today. I'm like, yes, good for you. This is a girl that has never played D&D before. She's super new to the game, and she's already understanding the character of a cleric better than most. Like, most players would be like, all right, let's get some items, let's get some of this, but you're a cleric. You're a priest. You've devoted your entire life to this god, to this religion. And I'm not saying I haven't been guilty of it. I've been guilty of being that first not-so-great cleric, my first cleric I played. He was a ton of fun, and he was more of a loner than an actual priest. He was more of a guy that was like,
no, my worship of my god is how much I bench.
But thankfully I did remedy that. I'm playing now, another example, I'm playing a cleric in current campaign I'm in. And I decided from the beginning, I am a scripture-quoting dwarf. I'm going to be quoting the Dwarven Bible all the time. So this is another tip on giving your characters flavor here. When you've got an idea when you're casting a spell, what is your verbal component? What is your somatic component? You see material component. Okay, I need some bat fur. I need a little pinch of ash or some grave dirt, whatever it is. But it just says VS, which I have to say some words and I have to make some hand motions. We had a player playing an illusionist. He worked out a somatic component with the DM that it was whenever he he crossed his legs, at the ankles. He was casting the spell, or it might have been arms across the chest. I don't remember what it was. But he got to the point where he'd actually signaled to the DM that he wanted to do this spell without even saying it. So he'd be at the table and be like, and DM goes, okay, rolls a die for a save to the enemy. But my current cleric, my verbal components are all dwarven Bible verses. I sat down at the beginning of the game, I said, okay, I'm playing a dwarf, I'm a cleric of Moradin, and I've got 4 sacred texts in the religion. I started setting out for myself what I believed this religion would be like. 4 sacred texts: Book of the Smith, Book of the Father, Book of the Architect, Book of the Warrior. And from that point on, anytime I cast a spell with a verbal component, I make up a scripture verse. So, like, the first time I cast Spiritual Weapon, I was like, Book of the Smith, chapter 3, verse 8. As my hammer rings out, the world is shaped on my anvil. And then Spiritual Weapon, blacksmith's hammer, appears around me and starts swinging it around enemies. Ancestral Spirit Guardians, it's like Book of the Father, chapter 12. The spirits of thy ancestors shall guard thee, and blah blah blah, and all these ancient spirits start swirling around me. It adds a level of flavor to the character that isn't normally there. It's important to a religious character to embrace that religious aspect of themselves. It's important to a cleric. It's important to a paladin. It's important to a druid. Most people forget druids are clerics. Druids are priests. That's it. Actually, you know, I got right here. I got the 2nd edition book. If you look in, so the 2nd edition, they divide the classes into basically warrior classes, priest classes, and magic user classes. And the priest classes include clerics and druids. I don't know if you can see that. Druids. Druids are considered a priest class. And people forget that a druid is a priest of nature. Their god is nature, or the spirit of nature, or the god of nature. They are a priest, though. Their spells are divine in nature. So having a druid that you need to, if you're playing a druid, you should really be embracing that part. To you, nature is sacred. It's not just, oh, I'm a guy who lives in the woods and, you know, lights up a J every now and then, like Radagast the Brown. No, I am a guy to whom nature is sacred. I draw my power from the spirits of nature, from the god of nature, from the divine energy carried within all natural things. Like, play it up. Be that character. This has become less about religion and more about just giving your character roleplay flavor, but play it up. Just go into it. This is one thing that I say the older editions did better than 5th edition, which enough of my videos go by, you'll see, I think, a lot of the things. Now, you'll see. In 5th edition, you've got the spells that clerics can have and all that. And it's like, okay, you've got the cleric spell list, you can take the spells off of that, these are the ones you can cast. 3rd edition and 2nd edition, it's not really how it works. Like, it is similar. But in 3rd edition, it's a cleric can't cast a spell that'd be against his alignment. So in 3rd edition, some spells had descriptors of being good, evil, chaotic, lawful. A lawful good cleric could not cast a spell with an evil tag or with a chaotic tag, because their god would not grant that power. If you're worshipping the god, the lawful good god of valor, and you decide, here, let me see if there's let me see if I can find an evil spell right off the bat. Is Finger of Death considered evil? I really should have had these picked up beforehand. Vampiric Touches, though, so which is technically a wizard spell, I think, but all the same. Ooh, this is great content here. Oh, it's not. Crap. Huh. Alright, well, regardless. If you're trying to cast an evil spell as a good cleric, your god of good is not going to allow that. You're drawing your power from him. He is the one giving you the power to do that. He's not going to give you the power to, I'm not going to say raise dead, but like create undead as a spell from, I think, Book of Vile Darkness. There are some spells that are just evil, and thus a good priest would not be able to cast it because a good god would not grant it. Also, even though it's not rules as written, what should absolutely be done by the DM is veto certain spells. Because, for instance, if your cleric worships a god of life, they're not going to let you cast Finger of Death. Like, that's plain and simple. Just like a god of healing isn't going to allow you to cast harm spells or inflict wound spells. It'll damage spells are one thing, but a spell that actively it's just and like sucks life force out. No, god of healing is not going to allow that. Second edition went farther with it. Second edition had limitations with the gods, where every cleric spell was divided into spheres. There's 16 spheres of influence that a spell can fall into. It's all... I've got them right here. All animal, astral, charm, combat, creation, divination, elemental, guardian, healing, necromancy, plant, protection, summoning, sun, and weather. So every god has a certain degree of access to each of these spheres, and thus they only grant spells within those spheres. They can grant major and minor access. Major access you can get all the way up to level 9. Minor is only up to like level 7, I think. So this falls even more in, where it's, okay, a god of, let's say, god of battle. He might give you access to the guardian sphere, as well as the combat sphere. But he's not going to give you access to the necromancy sphere. Or probably not the astral or the charm sphere either. It's these gods have specific designations of what they rule over. So you can only cast spells that these gods would have access to in their divine portfolio. Second edition also had different weapon proficiencies for each kind of god. So if you've got a deity of... a blacksmith deity would give you proficiency with a warhammer. Meanwhile, a god of thunder might give you proficiency with a mace, or a god of war would give you proficiency with a battle axe or a sword, where your weapon proficiencies weren't just blanket, okay, you have access to these. It was whichever one's your god, or whatever one your god would basically allow. It's not necessarily that. It's more just what your order would have trained you with. And as with a lot of things in 5e, I feel like it kind of lost a little bit of that flavor. Now, granted, the domains and how they work in there, pretty cool. I like the Channel Divinity. I like the way the domains work, but it does lose a little something. So I guess this has missed a little bit of the plot. We talked a little bit about religion. Missed the plot a little bit here. But at the end of the day, religion is a very powerful aspect in the lives of a ton of people. And in a world where the most devout followers of a god can throw lightning bolts and call forth the fires of hell, it'd be a real powerful force in a lot more people's lives. So, really, as a DM and as a player, think about that. Think about how that influences your world, how that influences a city or a small community, or how it influences a whole continent even. How it influences a character's life. What were they raised in? Were they raised in Chord worship as, it's all strength and that, but then later on they discovered the religion of Pelor, which is all about sunlight and healing, and they found a different path. How does that influence their relationship with their family? It's a big deal. So just, I guess what I'm saying is, stop ignoring religion in your games. It's only to your detriment to do it, really. You don't have to go overboard. You don't have to go too in depth with it, but give it something. Give it more thought than none at all. That being said, this has been the DM's Dicebox. Sorry for the large span of time between uploads. I will try to make that better. Thanks for watching. If you have any suggestions or comments or criticism, write down below in the comments.